And continuing with our regulars, next we have Alan's Antics, which Alan Taylor-Shearer gives us an update of what he's been doing on his own podcast this week. We include a number of his items in the show, but do click through to visit his podcast and get the full experience. So, what have you been up to, Alan?
This week on Alan's Antics, Iceland forgives entire population of its debt. And there's a total US and UK media blackout. Finally, serious economists are considering a position, whatever its name, erasure, repudiation, abolishment, cancellation, jubilee, debt forgiveness, will have to eventually emerge forefront in global efforts to solve an ongoing systemic financial crisis. The US Rothschild-controlled media, the RCM, or prostitutes as I like to call them, has completely blacked out and censored any news about Iceland's debt forgiveness. So basically, what Iceland have done is said, okay, you don't have to pay your mortgage anymore. Tell you what, why don't you spend that money into the economy? Why don't you buy yourself, I don't know, a new car? Or some Iceland-made products so that the money stays in circulation in the Icelandic economy rather than going to offshore and banks that have no connection with Iceland and are probably based in London, because that tends to be where most of the Rothschild banks are based. So all that money, instead of going out of the country and out of the economy and bringing poverty, is staying put and is being used and circulated within the Icelandic economy. Just think what you could do if you didn't have to pay your mortgage every month. Just think what you could buy with that money instead. Makes you think, doesn't it? Have you ever felt discriminated against? Have you ever felt that you didn't get a job because there was something not quite right with how you looked, or what you said, or how you spoke, or how you dressed? Well, this is from the BBC.co.uk news website. I know what you're going to say. We are supposed to be the alternative to the BBC. We're supposed to be the free speech, the non-lefty, all cuddly-woodly safe space. But this is from the BBC's own news website. The BBC offering black, Asian and minority ethnic schemes is, quote, the right thing to do. The BBC has defended offering traineeships to ethnic minorities after a national newspaper accused the corporation of being anti-white. That's the BBC reporting on the BBC and how discriminatory it is and how it needs its safe space for non-white people. It seems the whole BBC has become a safe space for non-white people. And this week's Anti-Social Media Award goes to... the Metropolitan Police in London. That's right, this week's anti-social media piece doesn't involve me directly. However, it does involve a colleague here at RadioFreeUK.org. And that guy is Paul Perrin. Or P. Perrin, as you may know him on Twitter, although he has slightly amended his... Twitter name to Paul Perrin v. Bent Coppers. Anyway, this is from Breitbart. Yes, the story's made it all the way to Breitbart, and we couldn't be happier, and hopefully other newspapers will pick this up as well. So here you go for you radio and podcast listeners. London's LGBT, that's lesbian, gay, bi, transgender police are harassing non-PC Twitter users and naming members of their families in the tweets. The new Met Hate Crime Hub will be staffed by a dedicated police team backed by volunteers who will monitor social media full-time for so-called hate crimes and trolls to criminalise. The officers and civilians will be tasked with filtering and identification of online hate crimes and identifying the location of the crime and allocating to the appropriate force. The purpose of this program is to strengthen the police and community response to this growing crime type, it was announced, and will be delivered in partnership with social media providers. This June, it was reported that the number of people arrested in London for so-called online crimes of speech, mainly made on social media, had already shot up by nearly 40% in the past 5 years. Well, if you set up teams like this, who are just there to criminalise people for speaking their mind, then what do you expect? Here we have a team that was set up to prevent trolling and to deal with trolling, which is a legitimate issue if you're online. Well, they just started trolling a member of the public for saying at Daily Mail UK, "Is the whole of Team GB gay and or ethnic?" And then a link to the Mail Online story that I read to you earlier. And apparently, that's why he was singled out and targeted by Met LGBT Network. Because apparently, he's racist, homophobic, and generally nasty. Having worked with the man and know the man, I can tell you he is the complete opposite of all of those things. So, Met LGBT Network, you've blocked me on Twitter, but I can still read what you're saying. So, I'll be watching you very, very closely. And that was this week's Anti-Social Media Report. Well, it's happened again. The Anti-Social Media Award goes to... Jane Garvey and her feminazi followers at the BBC. Third-wave feminazis use this alleged gender pay gap, which frankly and actually doesn't exist if you look at the figures, as something to make them into victims. That's what happened to me this morning, because I disagreed with something that Jane Garvey was talking about on Woman's Hour, because I'm a man. And what could I possibly know about anything to do with women, other than the actual stats and the actual facts that the gender pay gap doesn't exist? And there's this week's second anti-social media, thanks to Mary Whitehouse at Word_Service, a company that apparently isn't a company. A PR company that isn't actually a PR company, apparently, unless of course you go to their website, where they are a PR company who do copywriting, PR and communications strategy. Just remember that company registration number, which you can go along to the Companies House website and check out all the details there. It's 0888 1308. Well, that was just a little snapshot of the week on Alan's Antics on RadioFreeUK.org. To hear the full recordings and a whole lot more, go to RadioFreeUK.org. And there'll be more next week. Take care and have a safe one.